production of goods and services stays the same, and then we sock all this money on it, everything goes up. And the only thing to do then is do what Paul Volcker and Reagan did, is just clamp down on the credit and put us through a big recession. So that's what's lying ahead.
No, you're exactly right. Exactly right. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. In general, are you comfortable, are you concerned about the direction of the country? And then specifically, are you concerned about all the czars that are being appointed and some question as to their background, and is that getting around the Senate confirmation process?
I'll ask the last question first. Yes, I think it is. I think there are now 23 appointed czars outside of the confirmation process in the Senate. I think that is trying to skew the executive balance between the legislative, executive, and judicial boundaries. I personally am not happy with it at all, and there is some effort to force some confirmations because of that. I don't know whether we're going to be successful at doing it, but we're going to try. In terms of the direction of the country, the Constitution of the United States assigns to the Congress and the President the first major responsibility, which is to protect the domestic tranquility from foreign or domestic attackers. That's our principal authority, and that's what we should concentrate the most on. Everything else under the 10th Amendment, everything else that we is not addressed in the Constitution is left to the states. But there's been far too much federal government encroachment into a number of those responsibilities, resulting in a larger federal government. The more you have a central government, the less you have of independence and democracy and free enterprise and entrepreneurship. And I worry that we're drifting to skew the balance too far towards a social type system versus an independent democratic type system. And I watch that all the time, because the more you give over, let me put it another way. One of the things about the health care, if the government took over all of health care, if you think about it for a second, they would have all of the indigent in terms of Medicaid, all of the seniors in terms of Medicare and Social Security, and then the rest of the public in terms of health care, in some way or rhyme or reason responsible to the government for their existence. That's too much control and too little independence in that body. Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any hope with this health insurance, with this present plan? Do we have any hope of stopping this the way it's worded now? Or should we just throw in the towel?
No, ma'am, don't ever throw in the towel. George Washington didn't do it, and we're not going to start doing it now. The question is there any way to stop the current move to the single-payer government plan option? The answer is, in the House, there's no way to stop it, but you have two bodies, the House and the Senate. And in the Senate, we have a rule called cloture, which means you have to get 60 votes to agree to shut off debate, to have a vote to get a simple majority. Right now, there are not 60 votes to shut off debate. Joe Lieberman from Connecticut and Kent Conrad from North Dakota have said basically they won't vote for the government option. That takes their votes from 60 to 58. Senator Kennedy is basically terminally ill and cannot return to Washington, so he can't vote. That takes it to 57. So from a straight-out standpoint of the rules of the Senate, they can't get it to the floor and they can't stop debate to have a vote one way or another. Now, some of you have probably been reading or hearing about something known as the nuclear option. There is a provision, the only bill that passes the Senate that is not subject to a cloture vote of 60 is the budget. We passed a budget in March. I didn't vote for it, but we passed it. Passed pretty much along party lines. In that budget, they carved out in what we call reconciliation, which is an end-of-the-year process. They labeled health care as an issue that could be solved in reconciliation, which was a backdoor attempt to avoid the cloture vote and use the reconciliation bill at the end of the year, which is only subject to a simple majority, to pass substantially the financial section of the health care bill. But I don't think, no Senate, no party, no leader in the history of the United States Senate has ever taken the nuclear option. It would fly in the face of 225 years or more of precedent. When it comes right down to it, I think the American people will vote if you try to ram something down everybody's throat without legitimate debate. It's possible, but I don't think it's probable. Yes, sir.
So do you think the No Child Left Behind legislation will be reopened reauthorized. As you know, we've been floating around with the standards rising on a slow pace for several years, but the next 3 years it's going to skyrocket as we meet the 100% in 2014. Specifically, what we're experiencing in Marion County is one subgroup, special needs students, are expected to achieve the same level in all four of that, but it seems diabolically opposed IDEA versus No Child Left Behind. How are we going to reconcile that?
Well, first of all, God bless you for what you do with the school system. And all our teachers and superintendents, having been a chairman of the Board of Education, I'm a big fan. Have been one of the 9 that wrote No Child Left Behind. I recognize the success we've had with it, but also the unintended consequence of making it more and more difficult to hit AYP and putting more and more stress on the system, more and more stress on needs improvement. There are 4 things I think we will reauthorize it in early next year. That's my prediction. And there are 4 things that have to be done that we pretty much have a Republican and Democratic consensus on. Number 1 is to implement the growth model, where if one disaggregated group fails to make AYP, you can develop a 3-year plan to bring them back without falling in needs improvement. Allows you the chance to recover without all of a sudden in one day falling off the end and becoming a needs improvement school. Second, the definition of highly qualified is very problematic in terms of meeting the demands of No Child Left Behind, particularly in special needs. We're going to change that definition and put an alternative certification provision in to allow more flexibility in the hiring process to meet the demand for teachers in special needs. Third, right now, with the exception of cognitive disability waiver of 1%, all the special needs kids take the same basic exam. You cannot expect children with multiply different disabilities to take the same test and get a result that's fair, either to them as an individual or to their disaggregated group. I propose legislation to have the assessment for special needs children, IDEA kids, be determined by the IEP each year. I think the parents and the teacher are better served to know what model to assess the child's improvement than by giving them a single standard test. By the nature of that, that would take them outside of AYP as far as disaggregated group is concerned. But I think it actually would improve the instruction that goes to those kids. And I think if the parents are buying in at the beginning of the year, and they and the teachers are making a decision together, the support groups will remain strong. And then lastly, you have non-English speaking kids in your system that are held against you after 1 year in the school system. That ought to be 3 years or by obtaining English proficiency, whichever is sooner. Not just 1 year, it's not enough time, and that's something else we're trying to change. We do understand the head wall you're running into. We appreciate what particularly the administration has done in responding to No Child Left Behind, and we recognize there's some fixes that need to take place to continue to get the maximum benefit from it. Yes, sir.
I've got one question covered on our southern border, and I always wonder how come each state don't take the National Guard and send them to our border states for training purposes?
Well, as a matter of fact, the question is, why don't the states send the National Guard to the border for training purposes?
Correct.
The answer to your question is a lot of our states do. In fact, Georgia has had some down there. I went down to San Luis, Mexico, and Yuma, Arizona in January of 2007 and worked on the wall down there with the Tennessee and Georgia National Guard. Most of the field training mechanisms, the 2 weeks our guardsmen have to do, each state, not each state, but a lot of states have been sending those guardsmen to the Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico border to work on those barriers and work on security as a part of the training exercise. So that is happening. I can't say every state's doing it, but I know Georgia and Tennessee have, because I've been there with them, welding the walls.